How hard is getting a sub 58 in MiSide? To a lot of people, it might not seem that bad. There are already 6 people who have gotten a sub hour, so going down from a sub hour to a sub 58 probably isn't that hard, right? Well, let's talk about a sub 59 first. A sub 59 is considered an incredible achievement, as Panzer and I are the only 2 players who have ever managed to do it. Now to really put into perspective the sheer difficulty spike, getting a sub 59 3 times in a row is a complete joke compared to the monster of a sub 58. I asked Panzer, the only other sub 58 victor, and he 10,000% agreed with me on this. The reason why a sub 58 is so insanely difficult is because even with perfect skill throughout the entire run, if certain RNG conditions are not met, the run will not be sub 58 no matter what. When I first started getting good at speedrunning, I was able to get away with just repeatedly playing runs casually and beating my old personal bests naturally, and that has been the case for pretty much every new PB I've ever had. But as I went lower and lower in time, I hit a permanent brick wall at the low 58 threshold. If you're new to speedrunning or just haven't really achieved the top run before, you might assume the difficulty curve for speedrunning looks something like this. A linear increase in difficulty as you go lower in time seems the most intuitive, and you would think this is how it really is when going for a new personal best. In reality though, the difficulty curve looks more like this. An exponential increase in difficulty as you go lower and lower in time. Consider this, going from a 5830 down to a 58 flat is a larger gap in difficulty than going from a 1 hour 10-minute run to a 1 hour flat. Because a sub 58 is so difficult to achieve, I had to implement a strategy that I would follow to give me the best chance at getting a successful attempt, and in this video, I'm going to explain this strategy. This strategy does not guarantee a sub 58, however, it sets you up with a chance to get one. With all of that being said, let's get into what this strategy really is and how to execute it properly. As we all know, MiSide has a lot of RNG involved, and the basis of this strategy is RNG manipulation, since we need a certain set of outcomes to be true in order to achieve a sub 58. The problem is, a lot of players have a huge misconception about RNG in MiSide. Even though there are tons of RNG parts in the game, there are only a select few that actually matter to us. Consider this scenario. You get perfect wires at the very beginning of the game. Boom, 3-second time save right there. Next, you get the best spoon spawn and best pen spawn in the first chapter, and boom, another 3-second time save on top of that. And then right after, you get the best scissor spawn, and you get another 2-second time save. You might be thinking to yourself, wow, this run has perfect RNG so far. This is going to be a really good run. Then you make it to Chibis and bam. Not a single chibi goes into the other room and you lose 30 seconds on chibis alone. Those small RNG time saves at the start amount to literally nothing when compared to the brutal choke points, so caring about every single one of them is pointless. The basis of this strategy is to get as many runs as humanly possible to the major choke points and testing our luck there, rather than resetting constantly over petty small RNG parts throughout the whole game. Here is what the timeline of the sub 58 strategy will look like. There are only 2 places in the entire game that you should ever consider resetting at. These 2 places are Chibis and Dolls. Chibis and Dolls are without a doubt the 2 biggest choke points in the whole game, and you need good RNG on both to even think about achieving a sub 58. Even if you get good RNG on both, the sub 58 is still not guaranteed, so in order to get a single attempt at it, we need both of these major variables to be in our favor. This strategy involves 3 stages that I'm about to explain. These 3 stages are broken into Chibis, Dolls, and Endgame. Each section of the video moving forward will be breaking down each stage and how to pass them on sub 58 pace. The first stage is very easy and straightforward. Pass chibis by at most 12:30 on the clock. If you're out of the chibi room before the timer hits 12:30, you're on pace for a sub 58. The most important part of this stage is to make sure you're getting as many runs as humanly possible to chibis. Never, and I mean never, reset in the first 12 minutes of the game, because with good enough chibi luck, you can still save it and make it out by 12:30. Since this part is so volatile, we need as many runs as possible reaching it, and if you're constantly resetting, it'll take you 30 minutes to get a single attempt at chibis, which has a high chance of being a reset anyways. The first 12 minutes of the game can be passed on sub 58 pace, even with the worst RNG if you're skilled enough, so your skill really matters in the beginning of the game, and all RNG before chibis should be ignored. This part of the run is pretty straightforward, and if you've made it out of the chibi room with a time that's under 12:30, you're moving on to stage 2. Stage 2 is from 12 minutes and 30 seconds to 28 minutes, and this is the dolls stage. I mentioned that the second RNG choke point in the run is the dolls minigame, so we need a strategy to make it as consistent as possible. To be on sub 58 pace, we need to end the dolls minigame before 28 minutes on the clock. Doing dolls the intended way or the legit way would have us manually check every doll to see which ones should be accepted and which ones should be rejected. However, for a sub 58, this isn't going to cut it and will waste way too much time in the run. The strategy you might assume we're going to use instead is the triple reject guessing strategy. This strategy involves blindly rejecting all 3 dolls and gambling on the outcome that all 3 are rejects, which would allow you to pass this section as fast as possible. However, we aren't going to use this strategy either, and that's because the chance that all 3 dolls are going to be rejects is way too uncertain to be reliably consistent. You see, I actually tried this method for a while, and out of 20 attempts, 8 of them made it past chibis on sub 58 pace and made it to dolls, and out of those 8 runs that made it to dolls, only 2 of them were triple rejects. A run that makes it to dolls takes about 30 minutes, meaning the 6 runs that made it past chibis and ended at dolls amounted to over 3 hours of playtime that ended because of this gambling method. So if we aren't doing dolls legit and we aren't gambling 3 rejects, then what are we doing? Well, let me introduce you to the Ethica dolls method. About 2.5 months ago, I did a 20-run sample size test to see if there were any patterns that appear in the dolls minigame. After doing the testing, I came to the conclusion that more often than not, the first doll was an accept, and more often than not, the second doll was a reject. The part that stumped me though was that the third doll was extremely close to a perfect 50-50 on whether or not it should be accepted or rejected, meaning that gambling on either outcome is just as likely as the other. The part that I didn't think about though is I assumed that each doll in the sequence was an independent variable and that the outcome of one doll in the sequence would not affect the outcome of another. A really good point that Ethica, another speedrunner in the community, brought up after looking at my testing is the fact that every case that the first doll in the sequence was an accept, then the second doll in the sequence is always a reject. This formed the only predictable pattern in an otherwise random scenario. This is when Ethica created a method that changed the sub 58 strategy forever. He suggested that instead of blindly guessing on all 3 dolls, you should always accept the first one blindly, and if that was correct, then the second doll is a guaranteed reject. Then just manually check the third doll and do it legit. This was huge because it meant that we could completely guess on 2 out of the 3 dolls and still have a very high success rate of a run getting past dolls while still being on sub 58 pace. When you make it to the dolls minigame, simply accept the first doll blindly, and if that was correct, then reject the second doll instantly. Then when the third doll shows up, if it's not a red eye, check it manually and then choose whether to accept it or reject it after it's been checked. This will ensure that you can completely guess on 2 out of the 3 dolls and still make it out of dolls on sub 58 pace. After you've made it past dolls on pace, this is where the run really begins, because now you're on stage 3, which I call endgame. Congratulations! Once you pass the Chibi RNG check and the Dolls RNG check, you are now granted one single attempt at getting a sub 58. It is not guaranteed at this point, and you have to lock in right here, right now. Endgame is everything after Dolls, and the reason why I call it Endgame is because it's past the point of no return. Resetting at any point past Dolls on pace is not worth it, since RNG could go your way at any point towards the end of the game, and it'll take you a long time to get another run that makes it past Chibis and then makes it past Dolls. In the endgame, you have a gauntlet of levels that you must pass that are focused on both skill and RNG. The ghostly picture, the sleepy Mita blind timing lever pull, the Mila minigames, run and hide, the real world, the monitor code spawn, and a bunch of levels that you must pass quickly to secure the sub 58. A big part of this stage in the run is nerve control. I was shaking really badly when I got to old version because I knew I was on insanely good pace at this point. One single mistake or choke and the run would be dead, and I had to do that while being extremely shaky and nervous. Running levels so much really helped me with endgame because I was so good at the late game levels that even with nerves, I was still able to pass them really quickly. This just comes with practice, and you need to be very skilled at every level in endgame to secure the sub 58, even if you pass Chibis and Dolls on pace. I had about 10 total runs that made it past Dolls on pace, and only one of them was the sub 58 that I got. And that's 10 runs that made it out of Dolls out of hundreds of runs. So you could probably see why I was so nervous and why a sub 58 is so incredibly hard. You need so much setup and so many things to go right in the first half of the run for a mere single attempt at the end game. But if you have the dedication and are able to get a run that makes it past Dolls on sub 58 pace and have the skill and get the RNG to secure the sub 58 in endgame, it is achievable. Oh my god, bro. And there you guys have the current proven sub 58 strategy. If you found this video interesting or learned something new, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe if you enjoy MiSide content. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this in the comment section and have a discussion about ways to optimize this even further. Best of luck to you if you do decide to implement this strategy into your runs and potentially even go for a sub 58 as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.